I was born in the 1970s, and I was taught that it was wrong to judge people by the color of their skin. In fact, Martin Luther King Jr. talked about judging people by the content of their character. Instead, I don't know if you've heard his I Have a Dream speech, but it really was wonderful. Here's my favorite part of it.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Martin Luther King didn't talk about replacing white supremacy with black supremacy. He talked about equality and friendship, even amongst the children of former slaves and former slave owners, not to punish the children of the slave owners, but to be friends with them. I think it was Abraham Lincoln who said, "Do I not destroy my enemies when I make them my friends?" So yeah, that's what I grew up believing. That's what I was taught. I think it's true. Canada especially, we weren't a country of slavery. We didn't have the history of the U.S. South that Martin Luther King was talking about. It was easy to get along up here. There wasn't unfinished business, so to speak. And if you didn't try to right a wrong by committing the equal but opposite wrong, I mean, that's really what I think a lot of modern racism is. Don't you think that that was part of the message? Martin Luther King Jr. was obviously angry about the world, but he was dreaming about a world of forgiveness and peace. So that speech was in 1963. He was assassinated in 1968. The civil rights movement had a bitter half of it. It had black supremacists. It had the Malcolm X reactionaries, but it also had more success than I think anyone could have imagined. Let me skip ahead to the point. Barack Obama was elected and then reelected. I mean, it's almost unthinkable that that would have happened just 50 years earlier. He even won some southern states, former slave states, North Carolina, Virginia, which was the seat of the Confederacy. But actually, I think it was Barack Obama and the entire woke movement around him that took what should have been that final healing moment and taught people to divide and politicize it again. Obama could have been a great unifier. I mean, he technically himself was half black and half white. He was proof of unity, but instead he went full identity politics. He countenanced the rise of the Black Lives Matter rioters and a dozen other social pathogens that I think have actually caused racism to rise since his election, not decline as you might have thought it would. There's nothing more racist than DEI. And it's the vengeance kind of racism that's so opposite of what Martin Luther King called for. DEI tells us to remember our differences, not to look at what unites us. Now, so much of what I've just said is a U.S. story. And we watch so much U.S. TV and U.S. movies and even rap videos. We think that their story is our story because we read so much about it. We see so much about the story of race and gangs and slavery and discrimination. Not really. I mean, obviously we weren't perfect, but we were the destination for the Underground Railway of runaway slaves. We were the free place. You'll remember that it was the British Empire, of which Canada was a part until 1867, that was what effectively ended slavery, first ended the slave trade, and then ended slavery itself. Canada benefited from that. We never had slavery. So please help me understand this, as published in the Toronto Sun newspaper. Great story, by the way, very well researched, and I'm glad they published it. The headline is this: Black mandated homeless shelter on way, City Hall confirms. Toronto officials are taking applications until Friday for City Council's new Black mandated shelter, where everyone from employees to the homeless could be excluded on the basis of race. Oh, that's lovely. Going out on a limb here, non-Black people will still be deeply involved by having to pay for all this. So don't worry. If you're not Black and worried you'll be shut out, you'll still be included. Your taxes will, at least. Let me keep reading. City Hall has also decreed that experience in running a shelter is not a requirement for those submitting applications. Oh, really? Well, what could possibly go wrong? Quote, the city's Shelter and Support Services Division says the new shelter will help make Toronto's services reflective of the diversity of the city, but offered no specifics as to where it would go or when it might open. Diversity, eh? I thought diversity meant variety, not just one race. It might be clearer to understand if someone had proposed a whites-only homeless shelter. Would anyone call that diversity? But no one is that racist, except this is exactly the same thing. I'll keep reading. A city document says Shelter Services is developing, quote, at least one Black mandated shelter by 2033, unquote. 2033, that's 8 years from now. It takes 8 years to build a homeless shelter? 8 years? The whole Second World War wasn't even 6 years. Well, of course it takes 8 years. You see, there's so many important people who are in the poverty industry. And of course, we have to go through their processes and their consultations. You see, a lot of very important people have to have very important meetings for which they're all paid. It's not actually about homeless people. It's about people who profit off homeless people. That's very different. I'd even put the mayor of Toronto in that. Despite her dressing up for Caravana here, she's actually not Black herself. And I guess she would be banned from the homeless shelter if things don't turn out well for her. Let me keep reading. That document, a set of guidelines for prospective applicants for the shelter contract, says the intention is, quote, to provide opportunities for Black mandated nonprofits, also referred to as B3, the document says. Oh, I'm so stupid. I thought the purpose of a homeless shelter was to help the homeless. I didn't know that they were saying the quiet part out loud. Just being a scheme to enrich people in the poverty industry. That's what they're saying. It's not actually about the homeless. It's about actually getting the money into the right people's hands, the contractors, people, the consultants. All right, I'll skip ahead in this story. They say, the guidelines document is 22 pages long and includes a 4-page glossary of terms such as anti-racism, diaspora, interpersonal racism, and, my favorite, structural racism. The section on providing financial details, meanwhile, consists of 2 short paragraphs. This is a great report by The Sun. I love that this proposal had a 4-page glossary. I'm sure that will be very helpful and comforting for homeless people who are turned away for being the wrong race. They can look up all these DEI ideas. Oh, and the good news is there are more racial set-asides coming. Quote, the BE3's shelter competition follows a similar process for an Indigenous shelter, which could move to construction as soon as this year. Got it. You know, words like ghetto and reserve can have a negative connotation. They're often slums. They're often hopeless places. They're places of grievance. It's shocking but not surprising that the city of Toronto is actually turning those into pluses. They want to build ghettos and reserves in their homeless system. I thought that we all had agreed, left and right, that Indian reserves and the Indian Act were terribly racist. Well, that's sort of hot right now, as you can see. I love this part of the story. City Hall declined to make anyone available to the Toronto Sun for an interview about the new shelter. In a statement, Loretta Ramadin, Shelter Services Planning Director, told the Sun it is, quote, important to ensure community services are reflective of the diversity in our city. Got it. So only Black people equals diversity. Black individuals are overrepresented among people experiencing homelessness, Ramadin said, citing a 2021 study that found they make up 9% of Toronto as a whole, but 31% of its homeless population. The need has only grown amid an unprecedented surge of refugee claimants in the city in the years since, she said. Well, I think she's onto something about the refugee claimants. I don't believe those stats. If she's quoting stats from 2021, Maybe they were accurate back then. And of course, Indigenous people are even more overrepresented amongst the homeless in Canada. But look at those stats. 4 years ago, and by the way, shame on the city for shutting down homeless shelters using COVID as an excuse. But as anyone who has stepped outside in any Canadian city or town knows, Justin Trudeau has added literally 5 million migrants to our country in the last couple of years, some of whom are getting by economically, but many of whom are now in dire straits. I'd like to see the 2025 stats of who is in our homeless shelters, including breaking it down by what country they're citizens of. How many foreigners who came here to be temporary foreign workers or international students are in our homeless shelters instead? But I have a few other questions. I have some practical questions. How black do you have to be to use a black-only homeless shelter? Real question. If you're half black, does that count? Is that enough? I mean, Barack Obama was half black. His mom was white. How about if you're a quarter black or an eighth? Or is it like that funny meme from Family Guy where they have a swatch of different colors that you have to check your skin against? This sounds like a goofy question or a joke, but it's not. It's a real question. It's actually a legal question. Who gets a government benefit and who gets a government punishment and who does not? Those are legal questions. And both of being homeless and staying there and the real purpose of this, which is to slosh around the government money to the poverty industry, it all turns on race. So I say again, how black do you have to be to get a contract? Let's just cut out the homelessness part. To get a contract, how black do you have to be?